In addition to being modern, the Chinese have built this aircraft carrier with one purpose in mind: to retake Taiwan. The carrier's name, Fujian, represents the Chinese province of Fujian, which is directly across from Taiwan. Because of this, the Chinese have spared no expense in outfitting the Fujian into the deadliest and most capable carrier ever built outside of the US. One of the first things to understand about the Fujian is that this thing is huge. At just under 1,037 feet long and nearly 250 feet wide, combined with its estimated 80 to 85,000 ton displacement, the Fujian is the largest aircraft carrier the Chinese have ever put to sea. And unlike some situations in life where size doesn't necessarily matter, size definitely matters in naval combat. Being longer and wider than China's two previous carriers means the Fujian has physically more space to fit additional aircraft, people, and equipment. China has taken advantage of this extra space since the Fujian weighs in at over 20,000 tons heavier than the previous two. This extra weight can be attributed to more powerful engines, aircraft, fuel, bombs, and people. With all this additional weight to move around, the Chinese have invested heavily in upgrading the Fujian's propulsion system to keep its max speed above 30 knots. While it is unknown exactly what type of boilers are installed on the Fujian, we know that the ship has 8 of them with a total of 4 shafts. This means there are 2 boilers per shaft, which is standard naval architecture to ensure redundancy when conducting maintenance or keeping up propulsion in combat. What is not standard naval architecture is the integrated electric system the Fujian employs. On most standard Navy ships, including most of those in the U.S. Navy, the power the ship uses is created from generators that start independently from the main engines with their own engines and reduction gears inside the unit. Ships like the American Zumwalt class of destroyers and the Fujian turn this conventional dynamic on its head through integrated electric systems. For this power generation technique, the boilers create huge amounts of steam from burning diesel fuel. This steam then helps turn a high-powered steam turbine. The generators are coupled to this system where the steam turbines help the generators create power. This power is not only used to service the entire ship's energy needs, but also powers electric motors connected to each shaft to help rotate them, which produces the force necessary to propel the ship. The added benefits of an integrated electric system cannot be understated. One of the main benefits is that as long as there is an engine online, there will be power going throughout the ship. Additionally, and more importantly, the Fujian can generate large amounts of power necessary for some of its most sophisticated systems to work and adjust energy needs in real time without starting or stopping additional generators. Lastly, not having reduction gears for propulsion eliminates a lot of the complicated engineering associated with these very sophisticated and expensive pieces of equipment, making the ship quieter. So, what systems cause the Fujian to need such a huge amount of energy? It's pretty clear that with all that power consumption, the machines involved must be pretty powerful. Lucky for you, you get to experience how powerful they can be thanks to today's sponsor, World of Warships. Free to play on both PC and console, World of Warships is the best PvP game out today, and it lets you bring the greatest fighting ships from both world wars to the modern day into epic battles. Utilizing authentic historical blueprints, skins, camouflage, and damage mechanics, World of Warships is the perfect blend of realism and fun. Whether you are trying to recreate some of history's greatest battles or play a casual game with some friends, as part of our continuing support of the veteran community, we are offering a limited-time special for new players who sign up using the code VETS in the pinned comment below. Using this code means new players can receive 200 doubloons, 14 days of premium access, 2 million credits, and a special Tier 4 ship after 15 battles. There are also 2 new in-game commanders who are also YouTubers called Demolition Ranch and the Fat Electrician. Don't wait too long. This is a limited-time offer made especially to celebrate Veterans Day this month. Now, back to the Fujian. The largest energy customer on the ship is the Fujian's secret weapon, its electromagnetic aircraft launch system, or EMLS. On the Fujian, there are 3 EMLS, 2 on the main runway and 1 on the angled flight deck, which allow for near-simultaneous aircraft launches. While there are a lot of misconceptions about EMLS out there, the basic premise behind it is the system creates a tailored push to help get planes off the flight deck. Think of it kind of like a huge linebacker whose goal is to push down a person. In a traditional Katabar system, like every U.S. carrier except the Ford uses, the linebacker would be pushing the person down with the same force every time. However, using the same force to push down, say, a 100 pounds person versus a 300 pounds person would inevitably cause the 100 pounds person more pain. Going back to an aircraft carrier, replace person with airframes. And one can see that a one-size-fits-all approach with Katabar systems will eventually, over time, cause more damage to an airframe than a tailored push that is just enough to get the aircraft off deck. With MLs on board, which was a generational leap for China considering they had ski jumps on their previous two and completely glossed over Katabar carriers, the Fujian can use electromagnetic rails to help glide its planes off deck quicker and with far less maintenance and headache associated with traditional steam catapults. But MLs is not the only innovative technology Fujian has incorporated. In another straight-up copy of Ford, the Fujian has what is called an Advanced Arresting Gear, or AAG. Whenever an aircraft comes in for a landing, its tail hook has to clip one of the 4 wires on the deck of a carrier. Once the pilot does this, the arresting gear can stop the aircraft suddenly and violently. Traditionally, the arresting gears on Katabar carriers were hydraulic. Like the problems with steam catapults, hydraulic arresting gears were complicated, leaked frequently, and presented a bottleneck for flight operations. Though the arresting gear could change the hydraulic pressure for different sizes of incoming aircraft, this was not an instantaneous process. The AAG solves these problems by using water turbines below deck. The person controlling the AAG can adjust the forces needed to stop incoming aircraft. This has several added benefits. Firstly, the same gentle push that MLs use to help launch the aircraft is used to stop it. Secondly, the AAG system is much less complicated and can help recover more aircraft faster, which affects sortie generation for getting freshly fueled and armed aircraft off deck quicker. While most of the attention on the Fujian has been on some of the previously mentioned features like MLs and its AAG, there are some other features that the Chinese have incorporated that are not as glamorous, but still very important. Among these are the HQ-10. The HQ-10 is a point defense surface-to-air missile designed to knock down incoming missiles at ranges of 3 to 6 nautical miles. These missiles are incredibly fast since they move at around twice the speed of sound. They are proximity fused, which means that when they sense they are within a certain range from the target, the missile will self-destruct. In total, the Fujian has at least 2 of these systems that hold 8 missiles each inside their topside fixed launchers. But if a missile somehow gets past the HQ-10, the Fujian has another that can defeat it called the Type 1130 CIWS. The Type 1130 is the latest iteration of CIWS developed by the Chinese Navy. It is intended as a point defense system against anti-ship missiles. If a target gets close to the ship within a certain range and moves above a certain speed, the CIWS radar will independently track and engage the target. As the incoming missile closes with the Fujian, each of its 3 Suzes can fire an astonishing 10,000 rounds of 30 mm ammunition from each of its 11 barrels per minute. This literal wall of lead should be enough to destroy any threat that comes close to the Fujian. With an effective range of only around 2 nautical miles, the 1130 is the Fujian's Hail Mary in case a missile gets past the HQ-10. However, these kinetic kill systems are far from the only ways the Fujian can protect itself. China has remained very tight-lipped over the non-kinetic measures the ship can employ. Despite this, one can definitely assume that the Fujian has at least some rudimentary chaff launchers that expel huge plumes of ultra-hot metal fragments to confuse incoming missiles. It can also be safely assumed that the Fujian has at least some basic electronic warfare systems that are meant to jam incoming drones. However, it is not publicly known if the Fujian or any other Chinese ship has advanced self-defense measures comparable to U.S. Navy systems like Nulka, which is a sophisticated decoy meant to fool missiles, or Nixie, which is a retractable towed array meant to attract torpedoes. Despite these shortcomings, we do know for a fact that this ship will have the largest number of and most capable aircraft in the Chinese Navy's arsenal, which is a huge problem for American ships. Although the exact number of planes the Fujian can carry into battle is unknown, estimates right now place the figure at around 60, which is 12 more than China's second-largest carrier can bring to battle. However, Even at a high-range figure of 60, this is about 15 less than the maximum loadout the Ford can accommodate. But for argument's sake, let's assume the Fujian can carry a full complement of 60 aircraft. How would that be broken down? It can be safely assumed that around 40 of the aircraft will be fixed-wing fighters that will form the core of the Fujian's combat capability. Because Chinese naval aviation uses smaller numbers of planes per squadron than its American counterparts, a figure of 40 planes would mean about 8 squadrons of fighters or approximately 4 fighter groups. Due to the ongoing testing of China's ripoff of the F-35, the inconspicuously named J-35, the J-15 would inevitably fill out the ranks of all 4 fighter groups if the Fujian put to sea today. And despite the J-35's delays in reaching the fleet, the J-15 is still a very potent aircraft. First unveiled in 2013, the J-15 is definitely the best multi-role fighter China currently has in active service. A ripoff of Russia's Su-33 flanker, the J-15 is heavily modified to withstand the unique challenges of carrier operations. For example, the airframe itself is much beefier to withstand the punishment of taking off and landing. This additional weight brings the J-15 in at around 39,000. Additionally, because China's previous carriers were ski jumps, the J-15 has locally made engines that are better than the stock Saturn ones the Russians had installed in their aircraft. Because of this, the J-15 has a very impressive power-to-weight ratio that gives it a top speed of 1,350 miles per hour, or about 1.3 Mach. Armed with a whole host of anti-air, anti-ship, and general-purpose munitions, the J-15 is the one-size-fits-all aircraft the Fujian would use for any strike mission. But if you were keeping count, there are still about 20 more aircraft to account for in the Fujian's carrier air wing. It is highly likely that there would be 1 squadron of Ka-52 attack helicopters and 2 squadrons of Z-20 Halos. Starting with the Ka-52 Alligators, these Russian-produced helicopters are meant to compete with the American Apache. As a result, the helicopter is heavily armed with up to 16 air-to-surface missiles or 6 rocket pods. In addition to the standard 30mm chain gun underneath the nose, thanks to its heavy armor package and advanced radars, the Ka-52 is a potent helicopter that the Fujian would use in an anti-surface role for fleet engagements against escort ships. But where do the new Z-20 helicopters fit in here? The Z-20 is one of China's newest helicopters, and it is meant to be a straight copy of the American Black Hawk helicopter. Because of this, the performance characteristics are essentially the same, although the Z-20 has 2 main differences. The first of these is the main rotor, which has 5 blades versus the standard 4 of the Black Hawk. The main reason for this is that the Chinese wanted the Z-20 to perform well at high altitudes in Tibet, since more blades equals more lift and better efficiency at high elevations. The second more distinguishable feature is that the Z-20 comes standard with fly-by-wire controls. These more modern controls make the aircraft more responsive and arguably easier to fly than its American counterpart, although many Black Hawks are being converted to these new systems. So, with all those features in mind, how would the Fujian stack up in a head-to-head fight against its U.S. counterpart? Strip away the presence of enemy submarines, escort ships, or China's massive arsenal of ballistic missiles and mines. Instead, just analyze just the 2 ships. With those ground rules in place, it quickly becomes apparent that the Fujian is not in a good spot. Starting with the carrier's air wings, the Ford has an immediate advantage. Because it has about 15 more aircraft than the Fujian, the Americans actually outnumber the Chinese. Additionally, though American fighter jets may not be as fast, they have a greater amount of fuel and weapons they can carry, which means delivering harder blows longer than the Fujian can. Additionally, American aircraft have more advanced avionics, electronic warfare, and communication systems, which make them more survivable, easily managed, and reduces the risk of friendly fire. Then there are the problems with the Fujian itself. With the Ford having a nuclear reactor on board, the Americans could easily outrun the Chinese. This additional speed allows Ford to not only conduct more complicated evasive maneuvers, but also a better chance at setting up favorable wind conditions for its planes on days with little to no natural wind. During a protracted fight, Chinese commanders would need to be wary about fuel consumption. Because China's capacity to conduct underway replenishment is already limited at best, trying to do so during a multi-day battle is virtually impossible for them to do. Even if the battle lasted only a day, fuel conservation about what would happen next would be at the forefront of Chinese commanders' minds. With a nuclear reactor, their American adversaries would have no problem moving wherever they wanted. However, despite Ford's advantages in air wing, construction, and crew size, its biggest competitive edge is in its practical knowledge. America has been carrying out sustained flight operations for more than 80 years in numerous high-intensity conflicts. The Chinese do not even have one iota of the combined generational experiences of U.S. sailors from the lowest-ranked seamen up to the admirals in charge, which is what could ultimately carry the day in a Ford versus Fujian fight.